Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, esteemed directors, captains of industry, and thought leaders from across Africa and beyond. Good morning and welcome to the Chartered Institute of Directors 2024 Annual Directors Conference. It is an absolute honor to be your host for this unprecedented gathering of brilliance, expertise, and leadership as we embark on what promises to be a historic two-day journey of profound insight, dynamic conversations, and game-changing ideas. Today we gather under the compelling theme, good governance as a catalyst for economic recovery, growth, and development. A theme that resonates not just with the pulse of corporate Nigeria, but with the heartbeat of our continent at a time when the stakes have never been higher. This conference, therefore, is more than an event. It is a clarion call to leaders, to those who shape economies and direct the future of nations, to harness the power of good governance as a transformative force for growth and prosperity. In this room, we have architects of Africa's future. We have CEOs, we have corporate giants, directors, and thought leaders whose decisions will drive the next era of economic progress. This is the largest gathering of boardroom executives on the continent, and therefore expected to explore, dissect, and redefine the framework of leadership and governance that will not only help us recover, but thrive in an ever-evolving global landscape. Over the next 2 days, we will hear from a distinguished lineup of speakers, of visionaries whose leadership, I dare say, is setting new benchmarks. The knowledge, insights, and strategies shared in these moments, I am positive, will provide the tools to navigate challenges, seize opportunities, and position the organizations that we serve for sustained excellence. As we come together in these critical times, it is encouraged that participants fully engage, connect with peers, exchange ideas, and delve into the wealth of expertise available and at our disposal in this room. For those I haven't yet had the pleasure of meeting, my name is Oladele Ogunlana, and it's an absolute honor to be your host for this exceptional conference. Having had the privilege of hosting and moderating numerous events over the years, this feels particularly special because of the remarkable depth and quality of leadership gathered here today. At this time, permit me to recognize the following people in our midst this morning. I'd like to recognize our chief host, the President and Chairman of Governing Council, Chartered Institute of Directors, Nigeria, Alhaji Tijani Borodo, fellow Chartered Institute of Directors. I'd like to also recognize our office bearers, Mr. Adetunji Oyebanji, fellow Chartered Institute of Directors, First Vice President, Mrs. Amina Oyagbola, fellow Chartered Institute of Directors, Second Vice President, Mrs. Fumi Oyetunji, fellow Chartered Institute of Directors, Honorary Treasurer, Dr. Adeyinka Hassan, who I believe is joining us online, the Honorary Legal Advisor, and Dr. Mrs. Jidema, distinguished fellow Chartered Institute of Directors, our immediate past president. May I also recognize the chairman of the occasion, Mr. Muchiu Sumono, member Chartered Institute of Directors, the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, ably represented by His Excellency, Senator Bagodu. Welcome, sir. I also recognize our revered past presidents, distinguished fellows of the Institute, eminent members of the Governing Council of the Institute, and our Director General, of course, Mr. Bamidele Alimi, fellow Chartered Institute of Directors. Permit me to also recognize the Chairman, National Organizing Committee, Dr. Fatoumata Koka, along with all the distinguished members of the National Organizing Committee. Your Excellencies, esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen, and now, please join me in bringing on stage the Chairman, National Organizing Committee, Mrs. Fatoumata Koka, Member Chartered Institute of Directors, for her welcome address. Please give her a round of applause.
His Excellency Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR President, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, Federal Republic of Nigeria, ably represented here by Honorable Minister, Senator Abubakar Atiku Bagudu. I got it. The chief host, Alhaji Tijani M. Barodo, LLM, FCIOD, President, Chairman, our own Chairman of the Governing Council, Chartered Institute of Directors, Nigeria. The conference chairman, Mr. Mutiyu Sumunu, MCIOD, Chairman, Julius Berkers, PLC. Our keynote speaker, Professor Atta Hiro Jagal, CON, former chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission. Our guests of honors that are here, Honorable Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Mr. Wale Edu, Honorable Minister of Industry, Trade, and Investment, Dr. Jumoke Oduwale, MCIOD, Honorable Minister of Education, Dr. Maruf Olatunji Alausa, His Excellency, Mr. Babatunde, I'm sorry, my bad, Mr. Babajide, oops, sorry, let me get that. That's why we need digital, not papers anymore. His Excellency Babajide Sanwo-Olu, FCIOD, Governor, Lagos State. His Excellency Prince Dakpo Abedu, FCIOD, Governor, Ogun State. Distinguished speakers, dissidents, our panelists, discussants, our panelists, and our moderators. Past presidents of the Charter Institute of Nigeria here present, fellows and members of the Charter Institute of Nigeria here present, our cherished associates, partners, and sponsors, distinguished participants, guests, ladies and gentlemen, protocols. Thank you very much. Now, let me move to why we are here. It is my distinguished honor to welcome you all on behalf of the Governing Council of the Charter Institute of Nigeria, of Directors of Nigeria, to this 2024 annual conference, national conference. We have worked very hard. The committees have put in time, and again, I must admit that it takes a lot of time when you're in the kind of economy we are to come up with a theme. But thanks to our committee, and our committee members are all volunteers, I must state this, because we worked hard to come up with this theme, and thanks to our Governing Council, they were very supportive on the theme. This year, this flagship event by the Institute is focused on the issues that are facing the nation as we are today. And of course, because of that, the committee came up with the theme, Good Governance as a Catalyst for Economic Recovery, Growth, and Development. It resounds deeply with the challenges we are facing today in the nation, in our businesses, and of course, in the boardroom as directors. Therefore, we're gathered here today to reflect on how we can focus on sound governance and strong leadership to participate in driving the growth and the development of this great nation. I'm very, very happy and honored to be part of this, as we know good governance is particularly necessary as a tool to really foster the sustainable economy that we are all looking for Nigeria. The National Organizing Committee has worked strategically to curate a thematic areas that addresses the key issues of our time. Each section today that we were going to be talking about is designed to cover a wide range of critical topics that affects us every day. This includes leadership, governance, integration of innovation and technology into governance, and the involving role of environmental, social, and governance principles that is shaping the world in our businesses today. The climate of this whole year event will actually be the Business Meets Government Dinner. This is very important, by the way. If you have not attended this, you want to attend it this year. This is an opportunity for businesses to network with government, to talk about the significance of how we can partner and coordinate to make sure that Nigeria is sustainable in its economy affairs, and especially looking at governance as our tool to do so. These events enriches the presence of we have a lot of amazing individuals here today. And they're going to be sharing with us their experience, and we are also going to be engaging with them. Very seasoned boardroom leaders, captains of industry, high-ranking public sector officials. We hope that this deliberation will be one of a discussion that we can take immediately from here into our boardrooms and change and pivot our businesses. I would like to take this opportunity to thank again His Excellency Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR President, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, Federal Republic of Nigeria, the Chairman of the conference, Mr. Mutiu Sumunu, MCIOD, the keynote speaker, Professor Atahiru Jagal, CON, our guests of honors, our esteemed sponsors, and our distinguished guests, and all of our moderators and participants. Without you, our being here will be in vain. Our efforts will be in vain. I must also extend special thanks to the Governing Council of the Institute, ably led by our own President, Alhaji Tijani M. Birodo, LLM FCIOD, for his unwavering leadership, his guidance promoting sound corporate governance, and consistently providing a platform where important national and corporate issues are addressed. Thank you, sir. This appreciation will not be completed without thanking the wonderful, amazing, and when I say amazing, please, can we put our hands together for the National Organizing Committee for this year? All volunteers, but very consistent. And the Secretariat as well of the Institute for their hard work to make this possible. This conference will not work or be possible without your help and your volunteer hours. The committee is committed to ensuring that all key holders, all stakeholders are constructively engaged in this event. We encourage you to participate actively. Actively, meaning actively. Please don't go to sleep. actively. Network, share your values, insights, be involved in the conversation, bring your views, even if it's contrary to what you're hearing. Your input is valuable. Nigeria needs all of us, and governance is where we're going to focus for that sustainability. We look forward to an enthusiastic engagement, thoughtful, meaningful contribution, enriching conversation, and remember that this discussion doesn't stay here. It goes with us back to our boardrooms and our different jobs, leadership in C-levels. Thank you again for listening to me first, for registering to come, for being in this room, and thanks in advance for your active participation in making Nigeria a great nation for all of us through sustainable governance. God bless. And as they say from where my husband from, Eshe Pukwa.
Can we give her another round of applause, please? Please join me in welcoming on stage a highly respected corporate governance expert with decades of experience shaping Nigeria's business landscape. Renowned for his integrity and strategic leadership, he has been a key figure in driving corporate excellence and ethical governance across the nation's top institutions. He's none other than President and Chairman of Governing Council, Chartered Institute of Directors, Nigeria, Alhaji Tijani Borodo, LLM, fellow Chartered Institute of Directors, for his address. May I ask for another round of applause as he comes up on stage.
His Excellency Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, President, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, Federal Republic of Nigeria, ably represented by His Excellency Senator Abubakar Atiku Bagudu, Honorable Minister for Budget and Economic Planning, the conference chairman, Mr. Mutiu Sumonu, MCIOD chairman of Julius Berger PLC, my chairman too. Our keynote speaker, Professor Attahiru Jega, CON, former chairman of Independent National Electoral Commission, the guests of honor, that is the Honorable Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Mr. Wale Edun, Honorable Minister of Trade and Industry and Investment, Dr. Jimoke Oduwale, MCIOD, Honorable Minister of Education, Dr. Moruf Olatunji Alausa, His Excellency, Mr. Governor, our Chief Host, Mr. Babajide Sanwo-Olu, FCIOD, Governor, Lagos State. His Excellency Dapo Abiodun, FCIOD, Governor of Ogun State. Distinguished speakers, discussants, panelists, and moderators. The past presidents of our Chartered Institute of Directors, members of the Governing Council of the Chartered Institute of Directors, fellows, and members of the CIOD, our cherished associates, partners, and sponsors, distinguished participants, guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is with great pleasure that I join the chairman of the National Planning Organizing Committee of 2024 Annual Directors Conference of our great institute to welcome you all. This prestigious gathering brings together directors, business leaders, entrepreneurs, and corporate governance professionals from different sectors across Nigeria and beyond. The importance of this conference cannot be overstated, particularly at a time when the need for sound governance and leadership is crucial to our nation's economic recovery, growth, and development. I want to especially welcome His Excellency Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR President, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, Federal Republic of Nigeria, ably represented here today by the Honorable Minister of Budget and Economic Planning, His Excellency Senator Abubakar Atiku Bagudu, CON. Your Excellency, it is a tremendous pleasure to have you with us today. We sincerely thank you for graciously accepting our invitation. Your presence through the Honorable Minister is a great source of pride, and we are confident that the discussions here will contribute significantly to the government's efforts to strengthen governance for economic development. I also welcome, with deep sense of appreciation, the chairman of the conference committee, Mr. Mutiu Sumonu, MCIOD, Chairman Julius Berger, PLC, for your unwavering support, which has been critical to the success of this event. Similarly, we are pleased to have Professor Attahiru Jega, CON, former INEC chairman, with us today. Your presence is truly valued, and we thank you for honoring our invitation. A warm welcome also to our guests of honor, His Excellency, Mr. Governor, Mr. Babajide Sanwo-Olu, FCIOD, the Governor of Lagos State. His Excellency, President Dapo Abiodun, FCIOD, Governor of Ogun State. Honorable Minister of Finance, Mr. Wale Edun. Honorable Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment, Dr. Jumoke Oduwale, MCIOD. And the Honorable Minister of Education, Dr. Moruf Olatunji Alausa. We are truly grateful to have you with us. We are also grateful to have the members of the diplomatic corps, senior government officials, leaders of the organized private sector, chief executives of various bodies and public institutions, as well as other esteemed guests. Your Excellency, the Chartered Institute of Directors proudly leads the change in promoting corporate governance across the country. One of the Institute's core missions is to enhance the professional capabilities of directors and business leaders in both the public and the private sectors, covering a wide range of industries. As the recognized voice of directors and corporate governance, the CIOD empowers our members to make meaningful contributions to their organizations, communities, and the nation as a whole. We are committed to building connections among the business leaders and working closely with the government to shape policies that support favorable business environment even in challenging times as we have these days. A key part of our engagement with stakeholders in the annual Directors Conference, which is the flagship of our public engagement initiative, where leaders from private and public sectors gather to address key issues affecting the economy, society, and the businesses. The Institute brings to the fore discussions on economy, ethics, leadership, management, and most importantly, corporate governance, and indeed, good corporate governance. As a foremost advocate for corporate governance in Nigeria, the Institute views this event as essential, especially given the shifting dynamics of corporate and business landscape in our country. Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, the theme of this year's conference, Good Governance as a Catalyst for Economic Recovery, Growth and Development, is highly relevant to the challenges we face globally today. Across the globe, economies are grappling with socio-economic challenges, and Nigeria is no exception. However, there is one key solution that is central to addressing these challenges that we have as leaders and champions. That is the promotion of good corporate governance. Good corporate governance. Statistics show that economies with strong good corporate governance practices experience sustained growth and development. In research by Hashim A. Mahara, published in 2023 on the impact of governance on economic growth in 117 countries, the findings shows that good governance has a clear and strong impact on how fast a country economy grows, how fast the economy of a country grows. He further stated that 1% improvement in governance, sorry, I told you about these microphones. I told you about these microphones. He stated that 1% improvement in governance, such as better laws, less corruption, and more accountability, could lead to a 1% rise in economic growth. This also has a multiplier effect. When a country's economy grows, it often positively impacts its citizens and its neighboring countries as well. In Nigeria, we have seen encouraging signs in both public and private sectors, where sound governance has played a key role in improving investors' confidence and driving economic reforms. This has also rubbed on our neighboring countries, but there's more work to be done, and that's why we're here today. Esteemed Professor of Political Economy, Professor Attahiru Jega, welcome to the hall. Professor Jega will be setting the tone of the discussions for this conference by giving insights as keynote speaker. His achievements in electoral administration and governance during the tenure as INEC chairman are marked by his dedication to improving our electoral system and promoting democratic values, leading to successful conduct of the 2011 and 2015 elections. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, this year's theme will be viewed through the lens of 1. Leadership and governance in uncertain times. 2. Innovation, technology, and governance. 3. ESG integration in Nigerian governance. And lastly, but equally important, entrepreneurship and economic recovery, growth, and development. We have lined up renowned experts, seasoned professionals, and world-class team of leaders and speakers to steer the conversations and elicit insight over the next 2 days. Also, as part of this conference, we are proud to host the Business Meets Government Dinner. I repeat, Business Meets Government Dinner. That is tomorrow in the evening. This unique event will bring together senior leaders from both private and public sector, providing an opportunity for meaningful dialogue on how we can work together to foster growth and development of our dear nation, Nigeria. I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude to the National Organizing Committee, ably led by Dr. Fatimotu Koka, MCIOD, for the hard work and dedication, and the Secretariat, led by Chief Mr. Bamidele Alemi, our brand new fellow, MCIOD. I must also appreciate our partners, sponsors, and all the interdisciplinary participants who have contributed to making this conference a great success. Your presence today highlights your commitment to advancing good corporate governance practices and reflects your dedication to ensuring our nation's economic development. The importance of your support in bringing this event to fruition cannot be overstated. Your generous expertise and resources have been vital in making the conference a reality, and we're sincerely grateful for your unwavering commitment. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we recognize and appreciate your alignment with the values and goals of the Chartered Institute of Directors, Nigeria. Your contributions and engagement demonstrates our shared vision of promoting excellence in governance and leadership in this country and beyond. Together, we can create a brighter future for our nation, marked by transparency, accountability, and sustainable growth. In closing, I encourage us all to actively participate, network, share our knowledge in the upcoming sessions. Let us collaborate to drive Nigeria's economic transformation and diversification through the lens of corporate governance. The future of our nation rests on our shoulders, and I'm confident that with our collective dedication and expertise, we can build a new Nigeria that is economically viable, sustainable, prosperous for all of us. Thank you for listening. You are most welcome.
Thank you very much, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our host, Mr. Governor of Lagos State, Governor Babajide Olusola Sanwo-Olu. Before I bring up our governor, I'd like to recognize in our midst the Honorable Commissioner for Commerce, Cooperatives, Trade and Investment of Lagos State, Mrs. Folashade Ambrose Medebe. Thank you for coming. As well, I recognize Mr. Abayomi Oluyomi, the Honorable Commissioner for Finance, Lagos State. Mr. Sam Egube, Deputy Chief of Staff, we recognize you and thank you for being here. I'd also like to welcome and recognize Mr. Ini Ebong, the Deputy Managing Director of First Bank of Nigeria. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is my utmost delight to bring up on stage a visionary, a transformative leader, one committed to driving innovation, infrastructure development, and inclusive governance. The man who, under his dynamic leadership, Lagos has witnessed unprecedented strides in economic growth, urban renewal, and progressive policies that continue to shape it as Africa's leading mega city. Please welcome Mr. Governor, Lagos State, Mr. Babajide Olushola Sanwo-Olu, Fellow Chartered Institute of Directors.
Very much. So there's a price for coming late, especially in a business-driven environment like this. You pay the fine, you buy everybody lunch, you pay for the breakfast they've heard, right? And you get to speak not knowing what the other people have said. But I think it's always an honor when you come into an environment like this, and like what we've been taught in school, like when you're a member of Boy Scouts, you know, you always have to be prepared. No matter how difficult it is, you have to think, you know, while standing. So I want to respectfully apologize, you know, for coming a few minutes behind schedule. It's also because we're trying to ensure that Lagos is also still working and moving and ensuring that we actually can get here and leave here, you know, on time. Thank you very much. The special guest of honor, who is my boss and my mentor, the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, His Excellency Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, here ably represented by also one of my leaders, a two-time governor of Kebbi State. He was also a chairman of a Progressive Governors Forum. I can go on and on and on, an ex-banker, a man that is today a minister for budget, economic planning, His Excellency Alhaji Abubakar Atiku Bagudu, CON. And I'm also told that there are one or two other ministers, especially the coordinating minister who is also online. We've had a 15-minute conversation this morning already on how to ensure that the country is also moving forward. So if you're on online, Mr. Wale Edun, thank you very much again for tuning in and for coming. Members of my cabinet that are here, thank you very much. The chairman of our conference, who is also the chairman of the biggest indigenous construction company, chairman of Julius Berger PLC, Mr. Mutiu Sumoni. Thank you very much, sir. Our president and the chairman of council of the institute, the Chartered Institute of Directors of Nigeria, not only a lawyer of international repute, a banker who I'm sure the institute is gaining from his wealth of experience, you know, being a strong player in that industry. Alhaji Tijani M. Borode, FIOD. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and President in Council. The Vice President and other council members that are here, I acknowledge you, Second Vice President, all of our captains of industry, managing directors of companies and heads of government, parastatals and agencies that have come here, the shakers and movers of our market, distinguished guests, gentlemen of the press, ladies and gentlemen. I stand here this morning with a lot of honor and delight that yet again Lagos can be hosting another Institute of Directors conference. We do not take it for granted. We know that you have choices. You can as well say that because we're expecting Mr. President or a minister will take it to Abuja, but you've decided to fit in Lagos, your city, the center of excellence, the state of aquatic splendor, the commercial economic nerve center, and the place that has the largest number of IOD membership. You've decided to keep it here. So I want to formally and officially welcome all of you to your city, to Lagos. And so I join you here today at the 2024 annual conference of our institute. I want to congratulate the institute for organizing yet what will be another successful gathering. And you'll be talking about a powerful theme, which is good governance as a catalyst for economic recovery, growth, and development. Good governance as an enabler, as a catalyst for economic recovery, growth, and development. This theme will elicit discussions and contributions that will capture our current challenges as a nation, as a state, and also illuminate a path towards a more resilient and a more prosperous future. A future that all of us, either we like it or not, we must believe in. Because indeed, we don't have any other space. This is where nature has brought all of us together. And so we have to be positively, thinking of it and be thinking out of the box individually and collectively, in the public space, in the private space, that how will we make this environment a lot better, a more prosperous future. As leaders, we recognize that good governance is more than just mere obligation. It is an economic imperative. It is key to unlocking our national potential. And I stand here very humbly as one of that leaders that are in position of ensuring that we have good and purposeful governance. It's no longer just a myth. It's a responsibility that we have to be held accountable for. It's a conversation that we must be ready to stand in the middle of any meeting, our hands up, and be able to defend. Yes, we will make mistakes. Yes, we might not have all of the T's crossed and all of the I's dotted. But if we have a strong conviction and we're persuaded with our belief that we're doing the right thing, not just when you feel like you're doing the right thing at all times, then you must be able to stand up and say that you're on the path of good governance. And we've said it, that it is indeed a critical path that can ensure that our country will never go back into regression. And so we see that today, we know that transparency, we all talk about it, accountability, and trust are cornerstone of any thriving economy. History has shown that where these principles are absent, nations will continue to struggle. And like I did mention, yes, as leaders, we can make mistakes. We might not have all of the crystal balls, but if you are convinced that you are taking the right decision, you are making the right steps, which is some of the things that we are actually experiencing, which indeed the minister, or what we call him, the coordinating minister of economy, this morning, for 15 to 17 minutes was with me. And he did said a few things that I wasn't, he didn't, and he said to me that some of these points that we're seeing, that we subnationals are going to be the major beneficiaries. And that is critical. Because this is some of the things that we're saying, that in a clear federating unit, the people that are closest to the citizens, are not only at the subnational, they're even further down. That's where you feel the pain. And if the minister can assure me and keep telling me that we will be the major beneficiary, then we don't have excuses. We certainly just need to get our acts together as subnational, be able to think and work with them. And when those opportunities will arrive and come in, that we must have programs, we must have plans to be able to execute it and improve quality of life for our citizens. We have seen that the devastating consequences of poor governance, where corruption and inefficiency strive growth and erode trust in institutions. But history has also shown us that with strong government institutions, effective leader, and an unwavering commitment to transparency, we can build a strong and a thriving economy. I think the Institute also have that responsibility. You are major players in the private sector. You also need to be able to learn and stretch your hands into the public sector. Don't ever say that it is murky waters. I don't look murky. That it is one area we don't want to go to. This is our country. It's a sector, it's an industry that we are called to come and serve. Let us raise our heads up. Let us say to ourselves, I will go there and I will go and do the right thing. But we can also not just walk away with the people in the public sector alone. The Institute must, as a responsibility, look for training, look for conversations, look for things that can also help players in the public sector so that we all can be speaking the same language. And we all can see that, yes, we're the same coin, we're just on two different sides of the coin. And so here I stand as a leader in Lagos. We want to further commit ourselves that we will continue to ensure that values of transparency is not just a lip service, it's something that we must work and live with. And we have to have it in every facet of our administration. We have launched reforms to strengthen our institutions, to promote transparency and ensure that accountability cuts across all sectors in our government. Are there bad heads? Yes. Are there people that continue to give us unfavorable names? Yes. So somebody could go, on a building, construction site, and person is asking for gratification. My request is, why would you give somebody a gratification because you want to come and inspect a property that you are constructing? Just for the officer to know that you have certain approval for 3 floors. You are not planning to do 7 floors. You're not planning to do 5 floors. What you have gotten approval for is only 3 floors. But when he comes to the site and you realize that you have overbuilt, because the jurisdiction or the area says you can only do 4 or 5 floors, you want to do 7 floors to maximize the return, then you think the next is to compromise that officer. Yes, it might actually get compromised, but indeed, you are the one that is the biggest loser, because you are the one that has further enslaved and further brought down the quality of public sector governance in our country and in our state. Because thank you. Because really what will happen is to have that conversation and see the need or a reason why you want to do 7 floors as against compromising that guy to want to build more than what you've gotten approval for. And so when I get requests and say that people say that the fees that I'm asking for is very high, I say that yes, the fees are high because I don't want you to, having paid that high fee, have any money to bribe anybody. Because what will happen is if you have paid the right fees and you've paid it so much and it's taken out of your pocket, when that officer comes and wants to try anything, not only will you come out very hard on him, you will tell him that I'm reporting you, or you do something that will show that you don't have any spare change in your pocket because you put everything, for government. And so one of the things you ask is, has the governor not provided you vehicle to bring you here? Has he not given you extra allowance to ensure that you stay further late and do the right thing? And if he says no, then try and reach me so that we can build that society in which we'll all be proud of. A lot of the times when we see, for example, building collapse, is because people have not kept to the approvals that they have. Or developers are, cut-circuiting what should be a normal process. But am I absolving government officials completely? No. And so when I hear that the last mile officer is collected, well, that last mile officer happens to be a citizen as well. It happens to be somebody's brother, somebody's father, somebody's sister. So we have to see a change, either from our church, from our mosque, from our community development. That's where change begins to happen. So that last mile officer does not drop from anywhere. It's a reflection of a larger problem in the society that we all must ensure that we solve. I be number 1. So you see that government alone certainly cannot achieve a sustainable progress. The private sector plays a critical role in advancing good governance. Part of the things that we need to do transparently, we must give you access so that you can reach us, you can report, you can escalate, you can advise, you can criticize, whatever it is that you see that you want changes from. The private sector plays a critical role in advancing good governance by adhering to ethical business practices, investing in sustainable initiatives, and insisting on transparency in governmental dealings. We can create an environment that fosters transparency and economic stability. Together, I believe strongly we can build that gap between our intentions and our actions. And so this conference, in my view, is a powerful platform for dialogue, for conversation, for knowledge sharing, and more importantly, for collaboration. I'm confident that these discussions here will yield not just rhetorics, but there will be actionable insights that will drive economic recovery and development. There's no better person that Mr. President can send than our Minister for Economic Development, who has that huge responsibility to advise, to chat, to ensure that he leads and everybody, follows. And I know it's a great article. It will lead us well. And so, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is our collective responsibility to promote the values that underpin good governance that advances a future where economic environment of our state empowers and uplifts our citizens. In closing, I want to commend our Institute President once again, Alhaji Tijani Borode, the Board of Directors, and all members of these great institutions for your dedication to promoting ethical leadership and transparency in corporate governance. I'm hoping when I leave this public sector, you people will absorb me back again. I will not say that I'm a pet for a long time. Your efforts are essential to our shared vision of a Nigeria that thrives on accountability and excellence. I therefore want to wish us the very best on our fruitful deliberations and an inspiring conference that I know will help all of us and the nation. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Governor. Mr. Babajide Olushola Sanwo-Olu, Fellow, Chartered Institute of Directors. I'd like to invite on stage the Governor of Lagos State, as well as the representative of the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria for a presentation. The representative of the President, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, this might look out of the normal for you, but it's all part of governance. You do what is right at the appropriate time. We're making this presentation to His Excellency, the President, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, ably represented here by the Honorable Minister for National Planning. We are yet to hear his keynote, but we're tinkering with the program so that we'll make sure we do all that we needed to do within the time frame we have. Sir, we thank you as being the special guest of honor, and we, through you, once more want to tell the President that the Chartered Institute of Directors is a partner to the government. The country belongs to all of us. We are partner to the government. Whatever we needed to do as an institute, we'll do it so that we'll have good corporate governance and development in this country. Thank you for coming, sir. Yes, Mr. Governor, our governor, and our fellow, the fellow Chartered Institute of Directors. Your Excellency, you are a guest of honor, you are chief host. We are proud to be Chartered Institute of Directors. The seed of the institute started here. We are here, we are going all over the country, but this is our roots. And we thank you most sincerely for your support any day, anytime the institute goes to Lagos State Government, particularly Mr. Governor is there for us. Thank you very much, Mr. Governor. For this year incisive speech, what I've taken in me is that we are in it together. We must do the right things at our own levels and at every level. Thank you for this incisive speech. Thank you very much.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we would be having the remarks by the special guest of honor. And of course, our headline sponsor, First Bank of Nigeria, would also share a few remarks with us. And then we will prepare to listen to our keynote speaker. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, a distinguished statesman and champion of governance reform in Nigeria, he's recognized for his transformative leadership and unwavering commitment to enhancing public service delivery. As the nation's president, he focuses on implementing strategic policies that promote economic growth, foster accountability, and ensure good governance, paving the way for a more prosperous and united Nigeria. Please welcome the remarks by the special guest of honor and President, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu GCFR, ably represented by the Honorable Minister, Budget and Economic Planning, His Excellency Senator Abubakar Atiku Bagudu, CON.
Kindly sit down. And His Excellency, the Governor of Lagos State, Babajide Sanwo-Olu, the Chairman of the Organizing Committee, the conference, my brother Mutiu Somonu, the President of the Institute of Directors, and indeed all directors, past presidents, Mr. Tijani Borodo, the guest speaker, Professor Tahiru Jega, Patumatu Koka, the conference organizing committee, and all members of the organizing conference. Good morning, everyone. Let me say how honored I am to stand here on behalf of Mr. President. But before reading his speech, to acknowledge the kindness of the institute in awarding him in the award we just witnessed. Because once you are a reformer, sometimes it's lonesome. So to be recognized by an institute such as this, I think encourages Mr. President. So on his behalf, I say a big thank you. And so I also must acknowledge Justice Amina Augi. Thank you. I'm reading Mr. President's remark, who said, I'm pleased to join you today as this esteemed organization commences its 2024 annual conference. The Institute has been at the forefront of setting the standard and advocating good governance in Nigeria. The conferment of charter status further enhances this role. I'm pleased to acknowledge my co-chair at the Presidential Committee on Livestock Development, Professor Tahiru Jega, who will be the keynote speaker. His profound insight and expertise will enrich discussions over the next 2 days. This year's conference theme, Good Governance as a Catalyst for Economic Recovery, Growth and Development, deeply resonates with our administration's vision for Nigeria. Like many other nations, we face complex challenges within our economy and in managing our human and material resources. Yet, amid these hurdles lies a wealth of opportunities just waiting to be tapped into. Now is the time for innovative thinking and proactive governance to revive our nation's aspirations, reinvigorate our economy for the benefit of all citizens, and set Nigeria firmly on the path of sustainable progress. Good governance is not merely a concept, but essential to achieving our desired development. By embracing transparency, accountability, and effective leadership, we position ourselves to build a stable, productive economy and resilient nation. It is furthermore one of the priority areas of the Renewed Hope agenda. This government is leading in this area, undertaking bold reforms vital to shaping a Nigeria reflective of our collective dreams. We have enhanced governance frameworks by implementing systems to benchmark, monitor, and evaluate our ministerial performance, ensuring that only the best are entrusted with our nation's destiny. As directors, your role in complementing governmental efforts across the sectors of the Nigerian economy is valuable. You are the guardians of leadership, of vision, of corporate integrity, and strategies, ensuring businesses operate in ways that promote fairness, responsibility, and sustainable growth. Your commitment to good governance is not only valued, it is foundational to Nigeria's economic future. We must align our endeavors with global governance, technology, and human development trends in our quest for economic recovery. This alignment may require sacrifices, but the enduring benefit will be worth it. Our nation is fortunate to have a resilient business community that is remarkable for its adaptability and innovation in facing challenges, and we must learn from them. This administration recognizes and appreciates your hard work, and we are committed to rolling out policies that support businesses, particularly those capable of generating employment and wealth. Let me commend the Chartered Institute of Directors for your tireless dedication to advancing best practices in corporate governance. Your efforts significantly strengthen our business environment, establishing trust and accountability that attract local and foreign investment to foster long-lasting partnerships. Our vision and strategy as a government, the Renewed Hope Agenda, is about confronting our reality in a constitutional federalism without blame game, but the courage to acknowledge that we are not where we want to be. We are not growing fast enough or inclusive enough. How do we evolve a rule-based polity that does not determine winners, but give all a fair chance of competition? How do we ensure that we make those choices, pleasant and unpleasant, that are necessary to ensure that our country takes its place of pride in the Committee of Nations? You are no stranger to these choices. Some of you manage companies that are at various stages as startups in turnaround in situations where choices need to be made for the survival of the company. Laying off staff is never a pleasant experience, but when you are confronted with the survival of a company, you are left with no choice sometimes. How do we know our strategy is right? Again, this is a body that can help us know, because that's what you do. How do you know? How do we assess a company to know that it has a future? I think it lies in interrogating its vision and its strategy. Countries are no different. This administration remains steadfast in its commitment to nurturing an environment that provides equal opportunity. We are vigorously pursuing policies to ensure economic stability, improve business efficiency, and enhance the infrastructure that underpins industrial growth. The Federal Executive Council just recently approved economic stabilization bills as a critical component of our Accelerated Stability and Advancement Plan. Once passed by the National Assembly, these bills will facilitate an economy that offers more opportunities for all Nigerians, encourage innovations, and nurture abundant entrepreneurial spirit. We want more startups, we want more companies, we want more companies that are existing to do better. We want to deepen our capital market. It is surprising that sometimes when you meet global investors, part of the complaint they have is we don't have companies that are quoted in the stock market enough for us to put money in. Many Nigerians do not know that. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, confronting our reality involves making choices that are not pleasant, but they are necessary. That's why we removed oil subsidy in order to deal with decades of underinvestment in the sector and decades of a strategy that has not been working. Just like the governor of Lagos State, this has led to an impressive increase in government revenue, which have soared to nearly 9.1 trillion naira in the first half of this year alone, nearly doubling that of the same period in 2023. This growth has dramatically reduced our debt service spending from an alarming 97% to a more manageable 68% of our revenue. It has also helped address Nigeria's workers' needs by raising the minimum wage by over 100% to 70,000 naira, and that of our younger graduates under the National Youth Service Code to 77,000 naira. We have also embarked on currency reforms so as to provide a transparent, rule-based currency market that we believe is sustainable, that will provide equitable participation. We are embarking on innovative infrastructure projects, utilizing financing tools, but consistent with our aspirations in the future. We, Mr. President, in May this year, flagged off the Lagos-Calabar Coastal Highway. Last week, the Sokoto-Badagry Super Highway was also flagged off. These are investments into the future. They are corridors that we believe we add percentages to our gross domestic product. They are corridors of prosperity which will serve our future better and enhance our economy. In addition to other infrastructure projects in rail and technology, we believe that we are laying the infrastructural foundation that will support the reforms that we are undertaking. The oil theft and criminality that has limited our economic potential is being tackled on. Food production has been on the increase because of the successes our security agencies are recording daily across the country and even in oil production. We have undertaken a transition to cheaper source of energy, compressed natural gas, not only to move away from petroleum, but to provide energy competitiveness that will serve both our transport and our industrial sector. To ensure that no Nigerian child is denied access to education, we have increased funding to education. We have established the National Education Loan Fund. The fund has so far disbursed 50 billion to students of publicly owned higher institutions in Nigeria. Equally, households are not left behind. We have created the Nigerian Consumer Credit Corporation to de-risk consumer credit, realizing that countries that have done better than us or countries with whom we are competing have used the system of credit to expand economic activity while providing access to homes, to opportunities that otherwise citizens will not be availed of. The Consumer Credit Corporation, with 200 billion naira equity funding, is designed to catalyze the expansion of consumer credit and associated creation of a mortgage fund to also de-risk mortgage lending. We are in the process of processing 75,000 beneficiaries for 1 million naira micro and small business loans. the Bank of Industry had already processed benefits to 600,000 nano businesses, with additional 400,000 expected. All these initiatives are geared towards cushioning the effects of our policies and laying the foundations for a resilient economy and a great nation. Our resolve is to have a robust economy that supports all Nigerians, every Nigerian to thrive. We are not unmindful that the reforms were undertaken out of, especially generating social dislocation and temporal pains as we are transiting from an import-dependent model to correcting foundational issues that will support Nigerian enterprise, that will support Nigerian economy, that will make Nigerian goods and services, including our talents, globally competitive and attractive for us to market. Thus, we have invested more in social investment to help with adjustment. Ladies and gentlemen, the road ahead demands collaboration and unwavering determination. The public and private sector must work in tandem to unlock our economy's potential. Over the years, this gathering has served as a crucible of ideas where best governance practices and pressing national issues are posed in collegiality. The conversation throughout this conference will be pivotal in identifying challenges and proposing actionable solutions that will steer our nation towards a brighter future. I encourage you to remain steadfast in your commitment to good governance. Your leadership within your respective organizations will profoundly influence the trajectory of our economy. Upholding higher governance will leave a lasting impact on our citizens' lives and nation. Before I close, let me use this opportunity to remind Nigerians that we know the challenges and deeply feel your pains. The reforms we are embarking are necessary for retooling the economy for recovery, growth, and sustainable development from years of underinvestment. The fruit of these efforts are beginning to sprout, and I assure you that brighter days lie ahead. Together, we can build a Nigeria that is not only resilient, but also a beacon of hope, integrity, and shared prosperity. I wish you fruitful deliberations and engaging deliberations over the next 2 days. Hopefully, this conference outcome will advance robust governance practices in Nigeria and provide fresh insights into steering our economy towards accelerated recovery, growth, and sustainable development. I'm pleased to declare the 2024 Annual Directors Conference of the Chartered Institute of Directors, Nigeria, officially open. Thank you. But let me, since I have this opportunity, I've ended my assignment of representing Mr. President, but I must use this opportunity as the minister who is in charge of national planning to also invite the proceedings to help us, because as minister responsible for national planning, one of our tasks in national planning is to generate a national consensus occasionally and interrogate the national consensus so that we calibrate it as will be needed. And our national consensus is rooted in the fundamental objective of states, which speak about our economic objectives, social objectives, and political, even environmental. And it goes further to provide the platform for us to develop a perspective plan, which is the Agenda 2050 and the National Development Plan, as well as our Renewed Hope Agenda. Equally, in maybe in the attempt of our forefathers at keeping us focused on a strategy or an irreducible national consensus, it requires an oath of allegiance that is contained in the Constitution, that is to be sworn to by all those exercising authority. And what is the object of that? Maybe is some of the things that an audience like this, a forum like this can help in sharpening. For us, what it's meant is that at all times, there must be an irreducible minimum of commitment to sustained action over time. It can be tough, and I'm glad that Professor Tairu Jega is leading this. It can be tough in a constitutional federalism where power or decision-making is shared by 774 local governments, 36 states, FCT, and the federal government. So there you have it, at least 800 budgets in a year, 800 plans that need to have some irreducible communication in order to deliver growth. And that is why quite often we hear Mr. President calling on the subnationals, because typically it is presumed, this cooperation is presumed, but it needs to be interrogated into, because when we choose constitutional federalism, does it have consequences that we're ignoring? I've had this particularly during budget debates when we all think the National Assembly members are overreaching themselves. But unfortunately, maybe we have not come face to face with the reality that we chose constitutional democracy following the US example, and even those in that more advanced society, these challenges remain. For example, in 1974, when President Nixon delayed signing the budget, the Congress responded by creating a Congressional Budget Office and Congressional Impoundment Act, which limits the ability of the president to even determine budget outcomes. So these are things that as we are reforming forums like this that deal with this on a daily basis, because for us, for me, there's an equivalent from this challenge to the challenge of coming in to transform a company or turn around expert that is called to restructure a company or to look at companies in indexes or stock markets, Fortune 500, for example, to see where are the companies that were there 30 years ago, how did they disappear? What about the companies that had come in newly, what have they done differently? I guess as the president said, we have to know that like companies, countries are also competing with each other and are facing the same pressures. Today, we are doing better than many countries who, despite their wealth, are struggling to generate 1% rate of growth. Today, we have seen companies in the countries in the industrialized north where interest rates are making people leave their homes for the street. Today, we have seen in the industrialized north, richer countries than us, where people in many homes are choosing between heating and eating because of energy cost. So we must celebrate our opportunity and our blessings by God, but work together to make them better. Thank you very much.
Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, having declared open this annual Directors' Conference, I think it's time for us to pay attention to the keynote address. Our keynote address this morning is by former chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, a highly esteemed academic, renowned for his unwavering commitment to electoral integrity and democratic governance in Nigeria. His profound insights and transformative contributions to the field of governance makes him a pivotal voice in our discussions on leveraging good governance as a catalyst for sustainable development and national progress. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome with me Professor Atahiru Jega.
His Excellency, Mr. President, ably represented, and the special guest of honor, ably represented here by the Honorable Minister of Budget and National Planning, Alhaji Abubakar Atiku Bagudu, Your Excellency, the Governor of Lagos State, the Chairman of the conference, the President of the Institute, the Chartered Institute of Administrators, council members, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I stand on the protocol already established. I'm very glad to be here today, and I truly appreciate the honor given to me to address this distinguished gathering and deliver this keynote address. I must commend the organizers for choosing the topic assigned to me, which is good governance as a catalyst for economic recovery, growth, and development, which is basically also the theme of this 2024 annual conference of the Chartered Institute of Administrators. Sorry, forgive me, of Directors. Now, I must say that, as has happened in many countries, we need to interrogate the concepts of governance, bad governance, good governance, and what I call good democratic governance, as well as review the implications of these and the ways and manners by which societies have used the governance processes to create wealth and to enable their countries' economies to grow, as well as fundamentally to satisfy the needs and the aspirations of their citizens. If we all recall, the primary purpose of governance, as we are often reminded, is to secure life and properties of citizens and to address their fundamental needs and aspirations. And obviously, the purpose of government engagement and activism, if we can call it that, in growing the economy, in expanding the scope of the national economy, are all supposed to be targeted towards that direction. So governance is a central feature, indeed an essential feature, and a pivot of all modern nation states. Modern nation states, as we all know, are complex organizations which require processes, structures, and institutions through which authority is exercised and decisions are taken so as to manage the common affairs of citizens within the jurisdictional sphere of each of the nation states. So governance is a mechanism through which peaceful coexistence, harmonious relations could be engendered, common aspirations as well as challenges could be addressed, prosperity and wealth could be created and distributed, and the common basic needs and aspirations of citizens could be provided, protected, and defended. So governance in the context of a modern nation state, given what I have just stated, could be good, it could be bad. If it is good, it could be better, so striving and the efforts are made towards making it better. If it is bad, then even more serious and strenuous efforts are made in order to make it good and to create a sustainable environment that can continuously help to make things better. So to my mind, really when we talk about development in a nation state such as ours, it is not enough to talk about improve economic productivity and develop later, or about good governance alone, because good governance, we have to realize, as I will come to it, there are also notions and the historical basis upon which they evolve. My main argument is that in the context of a country like Nigeria, we are better to talk about good democratic governance for national development. And a lot of the things I will be saying are in this context. How I see the problems, how I analyze them, and what recommendations I make focus in terms of how could Nigeria really moving into the future, given the challenges that we've gone through in our history as a nation state, and even given the current challenges which have not only obstructed but continue to challenge genuine efforts for economic growth and development. What can we do to actually bring about good governance that is sustainable and that can address all of these challenges? I say that in countries under the liberal democratic framework, such as Nigeria, democratic development is circumscribed by good governance. Democratic development circumscribed by good governance is a precondition for socio-economic development. And indeed, circumscribed by good democratic governance is actually the key precondition for democratic development. So serious attention needs to be paid to it, especially as we strive to be a better and more competitive country in the context of the wider global political economy. Now, the evident inadequacies of governance and its weaknesses in forging an overarching national identity amidst a multiplicity of primordial identities have been obstructive to stable economic growth and socio-economic development, and we all know and relate to this in our country. Virtually all the major global indices which are used to measure a country's development prospects or development journeys, such as the UNDP's Human Development Index, the Economist Democracy Index, Mo Ibrahim's African Governance Index, Transparency International's Corruption Perception Index, and the Electoral Integrity Project's Electoral Integrity Perception Index. All of these show that post-colonial African countries in particular and third world countries in general rank very low in comparative relative terms with the so-called modern developed countries. Why is this so? And I think it's a critical factor to interrogate as we devise ways and means of nurturing and expanding the scope of democratic development in countries such as ours. And definitely this is one of the major reasons why, as I said earlier on, it is apt and timely to engage in discussions which prioritize not only good governance, but especially good democratic governance as a catalyst for economic recovery, growth, and development. So to expand on these introductory remarks, I have structured my presentation into 4 parts, introductory remarks being one. I also attempt to do a conceptual clarification. I will speak very briefly about this because I have the paper, it will be circulated, and perhaps it will be monotonous or too academic to spend a lot of time on this. But then I, in particular, look at the current Nigerian economic crisis, the way in which it has manifested, and then I expounded on how democratic governance, good democratic governance, is indeed the panacea for addressing the socio-economic crisis which has currently engulfed Nigeria, or which has been engulfing Nigeria, if truth is to be told, since the return to democracy starting from 1999. And then the first section is, of course, conclusion. I understand I have only 15 minutes to say all of these things, so I will be very, very brief. The first thing I said under conceptualization of these key concepts is to make a distinction between governance and government, because quite often people confuse the concepts of governance and government. It is very important to understand that governance is a broader term than government, and it talks primarily about the ways and the manners by which social life is coordinated and the role that government plays in the coordination of social life in a nation state, whether at the national, subnational levels. In this sense, government is the organizational platform of governance in the public sector, as market is the organizational platform of governance in the private economic sphere. Also, in the public sector, governance is a form of public management which involves what a scholar called as rowing, or more recently referred to as steering, the activities of a nation state in addressing the welfare and the well-being of citizens, and in trying to introduce policies and create conducive environments, even for economic activities which would be taxed in order to support the key objective of addressing the welfare and the well-being of citizens. So governance in the context of a modern nation state is first and foremost about providing for the fundamental needs and aspirations of citizens through governmental institutions and processes steered and driven and guided by chosen elected representatives of the people through competitive elections, which are supposed to be free, fair, and credible. And among what can be termed as the fundamental needs and aspirations of citizens in any country are, of course, food, shelter, health, education, rights, fundamental rights, well-being, and human security. All of these are paramount, and they guide and create the framework for the leadership that government is expected to drive. Now, it is significant to note, and that is the other important point I wish to make, we should note that the notion of good governance seems to have a recent origin in the way in which it has been promoted and is being driven in many of our countries. It came to prominence, if you need to be reminded, and it actually evolved within the context of the failure of the structural adjustment programs, which were meant to catalyze economic growth and development in so-called third world countries in crisis, but which actually failed to achieve that objective, primarily in the period of the 1980s. So this concept of economic development, promoted by the Bretton Woods institutions, World Bank and IMF in particular, with the support of major Western powers, and were now promoted as a substitute or a replacement for the Washington Consensus in the 1990s, which gave rise to the structural adjustment programs. So good governance in this sense was seen as the panacea for addressing all the distortions which SAP was supposed to address, but which it failed to address. Such good governance, therefore, became the framework within which it was deemed necessary to introduce market mechanisms in the public sector and the governance processes of countries such as ours. I think it is important to emphasize this, because the assumption is that if you make government more efficient, like the market does in the delivery of goods and services that are competitive, then that is good governance. The capacity to do that is good governance. And then the issue of the extent to which the governing processes address the fundamental needs and the aspirations of the people are relegated to the background. So that's why the concept of good governance needs to be reformulated in our own context to recognize the role and responsibility of government and to ensure that governance is democratic, is inclusive, is participatory, and it is focused on not only growing a national economy, but ensuring that the benefits of growth are appropriately distributed in order to address the fundamental needs and the aspirations of citizens. Lastly, it is also important to recognize the distinction between good and bad governance. Even if you take the definition provided by the World Bank and the IMF to bring efficiency, to produce more effectively goods and public sector goods and services. If you have people who are neither professionals nor morally upright or ethically committed, then obviously even that limited objective cannot be achieved. Because the selfish interests that go to define public sector responsibilities and the ignorance or ignoring the fundamental requirements of addressing fundamental needs and aspirations of citizens would not actually be given the priority that it deserves. I think I will stop in the notion of conceptualization of good governance to this as I come to illustrate further why I think we should be talking about good democratic governance and refocusing appropriately in that concept to the fundamental addressing the needs and the aspirations of citizens. So, in my view, Nigeria needs and requires not just good governance as it has evolved and is promoted in countries such as ours, but in the context of good democratic governance, which is anchored on constitutionalism, the rule of law, lawful conduct by elected public officials and representatives and their appointees, and of course also within the context of professional, moral, and ethical conduct, as well as selflessness of people given the responsibility of representing people in the sphere of governance. If we look at the challenges in governance that have characterized the way in which elected public officials operate in our country, you will see that this fundamental essence of what governance should be is not taken into consideration. So, in my advocacy for good democratic governance, the essential attributes can be summarized as follows. 1, electing representatives of the people in a transparent electoral process that has integrity, and electing people, of course, who have knowledge, experience, competence, integrity, vision, and selflessness. And regrettably, our electoral process is still, even though we seem to be making some improvements in some respects, is still far from producing these kinds of people that can drive governance in our country. Secondly, transparency and accountability in the policy formulation and implementation processes and in general in decision-making processes. This, in many countries, helps to engender trust for government among citizens, helps motivate citizens to be active participants in the governance process, and also helps to make citizens see themselves as partners in progress with their elected representatives in order to improve economic development and the good benefits that it will provide for addressing their needs and aspirations. Again, if you look at the way in which governance operates in our country, you will realize that issues of transparency and accountability in the policy formulation processes and in managing our common affairs is still far from being realized. Thirdly, respect for and compliance with the rule of law. This is required to mitigate excessive impunity and what in Nigeria we've been calling excessive lawlessness, which is all pervasive and at all levels of governance in our country. Just a few days ago, we all listened to this video clip that has been going around about an elected national representative that was telling somebody he could make him appear for virtually no reason. Says, oh, you know, and if we are not careful, apart from the apology that has been made, there may be no serious effort to provide sanctions for that reckless and dangerous, if not criminal, behavior. So this lawlessness, which seems to now be embedded in our governance process, really is something that needs to be addressed. Fourthly, efficiency and effectiveness in the management of public sector resources is very, very important and needs to be prioritized if the needs and the aspirations of citizens are to be addressed. And obviously, in the management of our common resources generally, and in the specific actions of institutions and the structures of governance in our country, one of the major challenges relates to the manner and the ways in which either public officials or their elected, appointed officials really pay very little, if any, attention to ensuring effectiveness in their responsibilities. Indeed, as is generally discussed, selfish interests, which the corrupt tendencies clearly manifest in, are the driving factors of either the formulating or the execution of policies that are supposed even to create the productivity and to enhance economic growth in order to address the fundamental needs of the people. I'll just mention more. I have listed 9 here. There is no time. The last one I want to say is paying attention to equity, equality of opportunity, justice, and fair play. All these are requirements in governance, and unfortunately, we also know that this is a very, very serious challenge. So, to my mind, the starting point in our discussions of how to make governance beneficial to the people is to focus on how these fundamental elements of governance, which are lacking in our country, can be addressed short, medium, and long term. And if we do not do that as a matter of priority, we will continue to sit in conferences like this, or we will continue to agonize in our private discussions when we discuss the challenges in our country without any concrete plan and action to reverse the situation, which seems to affect our prospects in that regard. I've taken quite a lot of time. I have looked at the conceptualization of economic growth and development. And the only point I would like to emphasize here is that when we talk about economic development, yes, productivity needs to be enhanced, products and services need to be created efficiently and effectively. Yes, national wealth needs to be developed, but in the conceptualization of people like Sears, development needs to be with equity. I mean, the benefits of growth needs to be distributed in a manner that is equitable and goes round to benefit all citizens, not just the privileged ones. According to Sears, the questions that need to be asked about a country's development, and that certainly needs to be asked in the context of Nigeria, are as follows. What has been happening to poverty, particularly in the context in which we can say that there is economic growth as measured by increases in our gross national or domestic product? How are the benefits of growth distributed? What has been happening to unemployment? What has been happening to inequality? Is the gap between the rich and poor being breached, or is it being widened while the economy grows? These are fundamental questions if the government is supposed to address the fundamental needs, if the purpose of governance, one of the key purposes of governance, is to address the fundamental needs and aspirations of the citizens. And according to Sears, Dudley Sears, if one or two of these central issues have been growing worse, especially if all the three have, then it will be strange to call the result development. Even if per capita income doubled, which applies, of course, to the future too. So in conceptualizing economic growth and development, we also need to be focused in terms of how the benefits of growth are redistributed in such a manner that the actual benefit of growth are helpful, to put it mildly, to the ordinary citizens who are out there. It is not, for example, in what we are beginning to see in Nigeria, where the little growth that is being celebrated is only manifested in the declarations of the profits that banks have made, rather than to how many additional schools and hospitals have been addressed in our country. Now, the next section, I try to discuss the current economic crisis and its impact and consequences. And I think everybody can relate to that. And when you get the paper, you probably will see all the details. But I think the key point to bear in mind is that our economy is terribly, very badly in shape. And this is, of course, cumulative, in particular from the period of the transition to democracy in 1999. So we can't single out one government and say you are the cause of it. I think the perhaps fairest thing to say is to say that all governments have contributed to it. So that no government can blame other governments and excuse itself from blame in this regard. So I believe that in the 25 years of transition to democracy, with regularly elected government and legislators at the federal, state, and local levels, what we see is a sorry picture and the evidence of systematic undermining of the welfare and well-being of citizens, as well as their needs and aspirations, particularly by elected public officials and their appointed officials also. And this has resulted in the current situation of almost total lack of state capacity to protect, to promote, and to defend human dignity and human security for an overwhelming majority of our citizens. And there are very, very clear examples, and I've provided tables in the paper to illustrate these things. Increased poverty, for example, to the extent that now Nigeria is being said to be the unenviable poverty capital of the world. And virtually every organizations that produce in quote credible statistics tend to point to this unfortunate circumstance. If you look at Nigeria's rating on Human Development Index, it is still very low and is indicative of lack of state capacity to promote socioeconomic development and ensure human security for our citizens. If you look at perception of integrity on Nigerian elections, we also rank very, very low. And we need to do more serious and determined efforts to improve the transparency and the credibility of our electoral system, in particular, to see how to mobilize citizens to engage rather than exit from the process, because that's what seems to be happening now. As citizens get frustrated about the outcome, what comes out of the electoral process, they are increasingly doing sit-down look. They don't register. If they register, they don't come out to vote, and they think that, why should we do that? Because our votes will be wasted. In fact, some of them have even a creative strategy of engagement, which is not to engage in the electoral process in order to have a good outcome of credible elected leaders, but to see what they can get to address their existential challenges at a very, very short period of time. You know, so people can go and take 5,000, 10,000. I think that because of the desperation of the politicians, the prices are even being hiked. In some states, we have had 50,000, maybe even 100,000. You know, so people exit from participation, but then negatively engage in order to solve existential challenges. Just take whatever you can get, because these guys, if you elect them for the next 4 or 8 years, you may not see them again. So it's a very, very serious and dangerous thing that is happening, you know, because once people do not engage, they do not participate, then obviously what it means is that the electoral process and the governance process will not get better, and either authoritarian dispensations will come as a result, or unfortunately you create an avenue and opportunity for a negative, totally negative alternative than what is desirable. I will move on. I have given tables which illustrate all of these things that I have talked about. I have a table that indicates what I call 5 features of human security, which is adapted from the UN Trust Fund publication. And what this table shows, regrettably, is that all these threats, and the threats are persistent poverty and unemployment, hunger and famine, deadly infectious diseases, malnutrition and lack of basic health care, environmental degradation, resources depletion, and natural disasters under environmental security, and then under personal security, physical violence, crime, terrorism, domestic violence, and child labor, and under community security, issues of inter-ethnic, religious, and other identity-based tensions, and under political security, increasing political repression, human rights abuses, and exclusion from the participation in the electoral process. All of this, regrettably, in Nigeria, if you take a history of this, measuring from 1999 to date, things are only getting worse. And it's a very, very dangerous thing to do. I have also provided rankings that organizations that are said to be credible global agencies that measure these issues provide. Nigeria's ranking and scores in global indices of democracy, governance, freedom, corruption, human rights, quality of life, security, and others. And it's unfortunate there are about 29 indices that rank these aspects of either governance or human security. And of course, in all of this, Nigeria regrettably ranks to a large extent very low, and in many cases, actually the lowest and or close to the lowest. I also looked at these patterns in a regional basis, even in ECOWAS, where we have been driving commendable process of building peace and keeping peace and so on. But when you look at those other important indices of classification of the level of democracy, Nigeria is also having a very low ranking. So the main point to emphasize in all this is that the past 25 years of transition to democracy, in the past 5 years, Nigeria has been afflicted by the misfortune of having so many, in quotes, elected people in governance who are neither selfless nor visionary, who are rather essentially greedy and reckless in terms of their pursuit of personal benefits, rather than on pursuing the objectives of desirable good democratic governance that can be beneficial to the people. I think this is very, very important. It may sound depressing when we listen to all these things, but I think we should not be depressed and demobilized. I think it should ginger us all to realize that nobody can solve these problems for us. The only thing that can address these challenges is constructive engagement by all citizens. Those who are enlightened and are selfless mobilizers of citizens, they need to increase the effort, and more people need to get off the fence and become actively involved in addressing these challenges. And the best way to address these challenges is to become politically active and engaged. If you get into the political parties, so far, I'm very sorry to say, from my understanding and analysis as a political scientist, in many of the political parties, what you can call the bad tendency seems to overwhelm the good tendency. There are good politicians that are trying their best in some of these, or virtually in all of these political parties, but they are struggling against the odds of reform. And the little that they can do is so frustrating and meaningless in terms of credible outcome that many of them gets to a point where they think, look, we can't change them, let's join them. So, but if more and more people get into these political parties, become active, we can help alter the balance in favor of the good and against the bad tendencies that for now are dominant in these political parties. So engagement is absolutely necessary. Constructive engagement is painful that many of our citizens, but in particular, significant component of our young men and women, are choosing either the sit-down look, or they are looking for existential solutions, personal, individualistic, existential solutions, which are manifested, for example, in this phenomenon of Japa. You know, the most trained the professionals that we need and require, unfortunately, are losing hope and thinking they can't solve even their personal individualistic challenges in the country, and are looking for opportunities outside. And if this phenomenon continues, then obviously it can only strengthen and make more successful the dominant bad tendencies that have occupied our political space. So I've made the argument also that given this context, really the only alternative is the good democratic governance framework. Active engagement and participation in the democratization process, recognition that this is very, very important, because the only good way to bring positive changes relative to other ways is actually the democratic process. I believe, and I'm a major supporter of what Winston Churchill once said that democracy may look like the worst system of governance, but it is about the only one in town. And if it is the only one in town, it's not to begin looking for alternatives, but to see how we can strengthen it and make it work for our country. So I think in order to pursue successfully this agenda of constructive engagement and good democratic governance, we actually need to ensure that all the good objectives, and in fact there are 4 variables in this regard, are brought to bear in the Nigerian context. 1, in our participation as citizens and in our choice of representatives and leaders, we must pay attention, 1, to competence, expansive world view, and disposition of leadership. Secondly, we must help to build institutional capacity, professionalism, and credibility, and the kind of leaders we bring into the governance process must be people that we genuinely believe can help in this regard. And of course, thirdly, credible and competent institutional mechanisms of dispute resolution need to be framed in the context of the rule of law. I think the judiciary needs to do quite a lot, and the law enforcement agencies need to be quite a lot. In fact, they need to be catalyzed and pushed in order to be able to do this, because clearly, even in these sectors where you expect justice and fairness, there are also very, very serious challenges of lack of credibility bedeviling them. And lastly, we have to find ways and the means of ensuring that there is advocacy and training and the enlightenment of the citizens with regards to respect for social core values which undergird and underpin progress and development in most countries of the world. Let me make specific recommendations. I think I have to stop here. I think the organizers have been very patient with me. I may have passed the time. So I would like to make these recommendations, just 4 broad-based recommendations. 1, there is need for patriotic Nigerians to pay serious attention to how to nurture and entrench good democratic governance rather than merely good governance as promoted by the World Bank, so as to catalyze economic recovery, revive economic growth, and place Nigeria on a sustainable trajectory of what I call people-oriented development processes. And it is only this that can be most beneficial to Nigerians. In the long term, you may be able to increase or improve economic development, but the World Bank notion of good governance is constrained by their overriding objective of what benefits they continue to tap from countries such as ours. It's useful to engage them, it's useful to listen to other perspectives, but ultimately, we should not swallow hook, line, and sinker what they bring to us. We must be very, very careful in terms of what measures are suggested to us, because if we don't do that, we may advertently or inadvertently fall into greater medium and longer term problems, even if we think we are seeing short-term benefits of that kind of engagement. 2, there is need for transparency and accountability in governance and full respect for the rule of law, and this we should not take as given. As citizens, we must continue to struggle and strive for this, because these are conditions for the generation of social trust, cooperation, and the active participation of citizens in the governing process. This, in the long run, will certainly help in nurturing and sustaining good democratic governance. I think, and I'm sorry if I stand to be corrected, I think one of the challenges we've been having with regards to leadership recruitment is that we tend to get people in positions of leadership and authority, people who are not prepared to discharge these responsibilities, people who, in spite of inadequacy of preparation, spend quite a lot of time struggling to get into office rather than to what to do when they get into office. And I think it's a very, very serious challenge. And the clearest illustration of this is that parties will develop so-called manifestos for their candidates and for the parties for engagement into the elections, but many of these manifestos really, if you read them, in fact, we were told that, regrettably, there are some of my colleagues, political scientists, who serve as consultants to help parties just manufacture these, not just political scientists, even economists, because I know there are many in this room, who help to just develop these manifestos, so they are not developed with the intention of actually implementing them. And the candidates do not relate well to the manifestos of their parties, because as soon as they get elected, that's when they now set up transition committees that are to now bring out what they will execute in governance. So these are fundamental problems that need to change. And it's only, again, active involvement that can help in this. Thirdly, for Nigeria to develop as expected, it requires people in leadership positions who are not merely selfless, but who are visionary, patriotic, and people-oriented, but who are also inclusive in what they do to drive the governance process. They should be people who have capacity, who have competence, and who have ability to appreciate and manage the complexity of our diversity as a federal system. And the best way to do this is on the basis of equity, equality of opportunity, fair play, and compliance with the rule of law. And Nigeria is certainly in need of such qualities across all levels of government, not just at the federal level of government. Lastly, there is then the need to, in spite of the mounting and demoralizing challenges, as citizens, as patriotic citizens, keep hope alive about a better Nigeria in the not-so-distant future. We must become active and constructive participants in the struggles to nurture and entrench good democratic governance for stable and sustainable economic growth in our country and for beneficial development in our country. It is seemingly difficult because people will start asking, how can we do this? So it's seemingly difficult. And in particular, in a situation because of that all-pervasive demoralization and disappointment and loss of hope. But it is not impossible to bring this about once all hands are jointly placed on deck in a purposeful manner to replace bad governance with good democratic governance. Before I overtax the patience of my host, I think I will stop here. Thank you very much.
So may I respectfully start by saying to all your excellencies present, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the board and management and staff of First Bank of Nigeria, it gives me great pleasure to stand here before you as the headline sponsor of the 2024 Directors Conference of the Institute of Directors. At First Bank, we truly respect what the IOD does in terms of advocacy for good governance, as it supports both corporate Nigeria and the public sector. Again, it is very difficult to stand here and speak after such a detailed presentation, excellent presentation by our keynote speaker, Professor Jega. I thought he delivered it excellently, and it touched on the core requirements of good governance, especially as it pertains to the public sector. Because clearly the failure of governance at that level results in poor outcomes, as we see in terms of, all our ESG goals and the impact on the average Nigerian. And these are very important things. It's easy for us to look at it and say failure of governance is only the part of, the public sector. But in reality, failure of corporate governance in the private world leads to failure of businesses, collapse of industry, and ultimately gives you the same outcomes in terms of unemployment and decline in all the ESG metrics that we look at. So I guess while we are called to speak here as First Bank, is because First Bank has been around for 130 years. So that means we should know something about corporate governance. And we've operated in an unbroken fashion for that entire period. Many people may not know First Bank was founded by a gentleman called Alfred Jones. I see many senior citizens in the room, so you remember the company. He's the guy that founded and owned Elder Dempster. The building still exists on Marina. I think it's around where Leventis used to be, right? So if you think about that, in 130 years, you can think of the sheer number of people who've passed through the management and board of that institution, and yet the institution still subsists and still exists, serving customers till today. So it tells you that good governance is not about people. It's about creating institutions. At First Bank, we believe that the role of governance transcends the mere fulfillment of regulatory requirements or directives. It's about establishing, maintaining transparent, accountable, and ethical leadership that drives the organizational strategy in the interests of all stakeholders, including employees, communities, and customers, thereby fostering long-term growth and stability of the organization. And if you think about that, and you think to Professor Jega's speech, if you transpose that and think about it in the context of the public sector, it's about providing benefits to every single Nigerian. So in many ways, good governance in the public and private sector are just both sides of the same coin. And it's imperative that we strive for good governance. In the corporate world, we do so, and at First Bank, we remain committed to strategic partnerships like we have with the IOD that will drive capacity building organizations aimed at raising a generation of leaders that will drive positive change in their organizations. So, in our view, the theme of this year's conference is extremely apt. The theme of Professor Jega's presentation cannot be more apt at a time like this for our country. Given the headwinds that we face, the challenges that we face, and the need for all of us to pull together so that we create a better future for all Nigerians now and for the ones that are coming behind us. Thank you very much.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the conference chairman, a renowned business leader and former managing director of Shell Petroleum Development Company of Nigeria, and Chairman Julius Berger PLC, Mr. Mutiu Sumonu, Member Chartered Institute of Directors, for his remarks.
Good afternoon, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Please permit me to stand on existing protocol. Whoever invented that statement has done so well for people like us. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I have a prepared speech which I will not deliver, because I think there is a risk that my speech will overlap a lot of what we have heard today. And we have had very eloquent and deep thinkers presented to us today. So there's no point for me going over what they have said again and again. However, I'm going to dwell on two things which, in my opinion, are unique. And by the way, I will be willing to give my speech to the IAD Secretariat, so if you want to load it onto your website, so it is still available. Two things I want to talk about is, number one, the place of character in governance. For most people, governance is about rules and compliance, but I beg to differ. Character is the bedrock of governance. I tell you, if somebody approaches me today to say, Mr. Sumonu, please, there is this one who is sponsoring this initiative, sponsoring this business, and we want you to be part of it. My first question is, who is the promoter? And I'm not interested in the name. I'm interested in the character of that individual. If you don't have the right character, no matter the rules and your compliance culture, everything will fail. And for me, as a corporate governor and also as a father, I look at our society and I keep asking myself the questions. Can we all, as parents, in all good conscience, absolve ourselves from the malaise of our society, of our country? The answer is no. If we all build up our children properly and instill in them good characters, this whole issue of governance, and on this platform, I'm only talking corporate governance. I don't want to delve into public sector governance. But corporate governance, for me, is the bedrock. If we get corporate governance right, public sector governance too will fall in line. So, ladies and gentlemen, I really want us to start to see character as extremely important. Let us start it from our homes. when our children are asking us for something that we believe is not right, let us not try to spoil them by just looking for ways and means of getting it for them. And that is where the whole issue of governance starts to get weakened. So ladies and gentlemen, I really want us to really appreciate that character is the bedrock of corporate governance. My second point I want to mention about governance has to do with the maturity model. Because you can, if you are focused on just what are the rules and are people complying with the rules, I think we are missing the point completely. And I see this in very many companies. I see this in very many boards. All they are after is to say, okay, are they following the rule? That for me is intellectual laziness. Every rule at any point in time, in my view, will be up for debate, will be up for a change. But when people are not willing to engage, they just want to apply that rule, whether it is obsolete, whether it is still relevant or not. So I think we really need to pay a lot of attention, recognizing that corporate model has different levels of maturity. And I'm not advocating that we start at the highest level. So at the lowest level, it's about rules. Are they complying? But don't get stuck there, please. Don't get stuck there. There are occasions when the rules have been made, and then you realize that these rules are no longer relevant. As corporate governors, we must be ready to challenge the rules. Don't do it unilaterally. Open it up for debate and let that conversation go on. I always give an example of my time as a CEO. I had someone who has retired, and he took ill after retirement, and he wrote me as the MD that, can the company help me? Of course, you know, in a big company like Shell, you have to go back to your board. And of course, I got to the board, and I got a very bad pushback that we don't do this. We only do this for our staff. I felt so sad that why, just because we do not want to take initiative, we are using rules and policies as a cover-up. And I really felt this was not right. But you know what I did? I then went outside the company to solicit for help for this individual. And I was able to raise $250,000. And this was more than 10 years ago. Then I came back to the company to say we should be ashamed that people who don't know this guy, but just because they know that he's an ex-staff, are willing to make this kind of contribution. Shouldn't we also do something for this guy? And shamefully, other people then said, yeah, I think so. Even no matter how small it is, we should do. So what I'm trying to paint here is that sometimes just sticking to rules and compliance is a sign of laziness. It's a sign that we are not willing to break the barrier and explore what other things are possible. And I'll give you another example in terms of just following rules, where following rules may actually lead you to losing money. I saw a note one day from one of my staff, very brilliant staff, asking me that he would like to volunteer to leave the company so that he can take the money. I said, why? You are a young man, you have a lot of future ahead of you. Why do you want this money? I asked him to come to my office. And he told me, excuse me, sir, my problem is my wife needed a kidney transplant, and the only donor we have found so far is our son. And I've been to HR. HR said the policy does not allow us to send you abroad. So we'll go and do it at St. Nicholas. And the guy said, I'm so scared having 2 members of my family to go through this risk. I said, okay, write back to HR and copy me this time. So he did that. Of course, HR gleefully replied, stating the policy, stating the rules. We do not want to risk precedents. And this time, because HR probably noticed that they are bringing him with you at this stage. So he also then copied my own boss, who is an Oyibo person. So then I saw a reply that we don't do this, we don't send staff, spouses, or families abroad for treatment. We only do it for our staff. And I felt so terrible about it. But I also realized I cannot be arguing over an email with my own superior. So I sent her an email. I said, I saw this, your comment, I saw HR comment, but I have a question for you. If this were to be my wife, what will this company do? I did not get any reply, but the next thing I knew was that the guy was approved to take his family abroad for treatment. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm saying let us not be slaves to rules and compliance. Let us have open conversation. Where things need to be changed, let us have the courage to change it. And most importantly, please never discard character. That is the bedrock of good governance. Thank you.
I'd like to ask that you stay on stage, sir. I'd like to ask that you stay on stage as I invite the President, the Chairman of Governing Council, Chartered Institute of Directors, Nigeria, and Alhaji Borodo to join us on stage.
Chairman, it's about character. It's about character. It's about challenging the rules. You know, human beings make rules and regulations. Don't be a slave to those rules and regulations. That's what you're saying. If you need to challenge them for a better society. Thank you for this, and we're happy to have noted these 2 issues: character, challenge to rules, so that we can improve our society. My chairman, thank you for these words. We're happy for this.
I'd like to ask that you stay on stage as I invite the first and second vice president on stage, and also please welcome Professor Atahiru Jega back on stage.
Prof. I have my past presidents here and their distinguished past presidents. I'll make this presentation for Professor Jega for being a keynote speaker here. But we'll have another presentation for him. When it's here, I'll tell you what it is. Prof, for a keynote address to us. You've talked to governance, democratic governance, in the democratic space. But also, the chairman of the occasion limited himself to corporate governance. So I can say this audience, we're really blessed, not only public, but private governance. Thank you for this presentation, Professor. Sir, for this award, may I ask my distinguished past presidents to come? There are many of you here. Those of you that can come up here will appreciate that because it's a special award for the professor. Past president, distinguished past presidents. Yes, you see, you don't easily. Some of us should come this way, sir. My DPP. Thank you, sirs. Distinguished participants. As IOD, we normally have different awards in different categories every year. And one of the awards we do every year is Award for Excellence and Leadership. Members nominate who and who will win this award or not. Corporate bodies are involved in it. The stock exchange is involved in it. And we call it award, Anofi Gobadia Award for Excellence and Leadership. And Professor Jega won this award last year, 2023. Unfortunately, he was busy elsewhere. That's why we couldn't give it to him. But our awards are awards we keep. We have the opportunity, Professor. This is an award you won. Since last year, we kept it for you. In safe custody, may I have the honor of presenting to you now. In that regard, I want to thank my past presidents, the chairman of this occasion, and I will yield to the DG. So may we sit down, please. Thank you very much.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it's been a wonderful day. We are running a little behind schedule, not because we started late, but because there is much to say. And you agree with me that everything that has been said here this morning, come this afternoon, has been quite beneficial. So I want to apologize first to our speakers, discussant, and moderator for the first session. We'll start very soon. And the MC has agreed to share part of his payment with me. And he has asked us to announce that he will only give us 15 minutes. It's not me, it's the MC. 15 minutes to have tea. You can even bring our tea here so that we can start the first plenary session quickly. Everyone involved in that session are here already. But my role here really, I thought I needed to hand that money first. So my role here is to say thank you. And really, I wonder where to start from. Because today has been very glorious. I see today as a rebirth of the annual directors conference. This is the highest turnout of directors I've seen in the last 7 years. Thank you very much, directors. Thank you very much. Incidentally, this was the year we feared that we may not have people here because of what is going on in the economy. But like somebody said, people will be here because we have chosen a very relevant theme. And of course, the Institute has also become even more relevant to its members. So thank you very much, everybody, for being here. But specifically, I am obliged, of course, to thank the President, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces. And I'm doing it despite the fact that the Minister is not here. This program is being run live on News Central. So I'm sure one way or the other, I will get to know about it. We want to thank him, not just for representing the President here today, but even in his own capacity. Remember, even after his speech, he gave us some assignments. And I told my team, I hope this is being recorded, because it forms a crux of what we'll be talking about going forward. I want to thank our keynote speaker. When I was writing the letter, sir, and I wrote 15 minutes, I knew I was fooling myself. You are a professor. And professors speak with authority on anything, and that was what you did here today. I thank you very much on behalf of the Institute. Thank you very much. There are very good takeaways from this. And of course, our chairman, there was a little mix-up in our protocol. And when you spoke, in my mind I said, my God, this is what we will have lost. So I'm glad that you accepted our errors and you are up here to speak. I say a very big thank you to you too, sir. And we really appreciate the charge you have given us. Thank you very much. I learned something new from the examples you have given. Sometimes it's not just about the rules and regulation. It's also about the human being and your ability to properly interpret those rules. Somebody used the word compassion. Maybe it should come into play in also everything we do. Thank you very much, sir. I also want to, of course, I want to move to our sponsors. And I want to say one thing. The fact that sitting down there, I saw the colors we have chosen this year for the ADC. Without even knowing that, First Bank is going to come in very strong for us. Look at the logo of First Bank and look at the colors we have chosen. It was just a coincidence, and look at how this coincidence worked out for us. First Bank, thank you very much. I apologize for the little itch, but we say thank you very much for accommodating us. Thank you. God bless you, sir. And of course, I want to thank the BOA Group, always coming through for us. In fact, the president has said he will be here, but unfortunately, he had to cancel at last minute because of that. But of course, executive directors of BOA are here, and I'm sure they will take our message to him. We thank you for being there for us all the time. The governor has left. And one thing I would have loved to say while he was here and why thanking him is the fact that today, Lagos State is the single, how do I put this now? The organization with the highest number of directors that are members of the Institute. Before I joined the Institute, there were members of IOD. The governor himself had been a member of IOD before I joined the Institute. And under his tenure, we have inducted over 80 PAMSECs and directors as members of the Institute. So when he talks about his belief in governance, I agree with him, because these directors were made to go through the IOD training as it's supposed to be. And he has even promised more today. So ladies and gentlemen, let us thank His Excellency, the Governor of Lagos State. We also want to thank the Central Bank of Nigeria, always supporting us, the Bank of Industry, and of course the Lagos State Internal Revenue Service, Providence Bank, Zenith Bank, and Polo for the wonderful gift they have promised all our participants. I think very soon they'll start distributing it. I want to say thank you to them. Of course, to our media partners. Somebody had said the publicity this year has been very wonderful. It's all thanks to the support we got from Punch, from LASA, that's the Lagos State Outdoor Advertising Agency, from Classic FM, from News Direct, from Lagos Talk, Beat FM, Niger FM, Rapid TV, and of course, News Central. So we say thank you very much to this media organization for their support. I also want to thank all our past presidents who are here. And I want to thank Ms. Benedicta Moloku, Distinguished Fellow of the Institute. Thank you very much for coming. I want to thank Architect T.C. Awagu, Distinguished Fellow. Thank you very much for coming. I thank Chief Mrs. Eniola Fadayomi, Distinguished Fellow. Thank you very much. I want to thank Alhaji Ahmed Rufai Mohammed. He's been here since yesterday. He played very active. He was very active at the golf session yesterday. Thank you very much for coming, sir. And of course, I also want to thank Chief Chris Okunowo, the most compliant past president here today, because he has his medallion around his neck. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. I also want to thank our immediate past president. In Nigerian, by all standards, you can see the color she's wearing. It's a green. Thank you very much, Dr. E.J. Jidema, Distinguished Fellow of the Institute. I want to thank also the chairman of the dinner. Why am I thanking her ahead? She's here. Retired Justice Aminat Algi. Thank you very much, madam. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for coming. There are so many people to thank. I want to say it's always difficult when you stand here, but I must thank the chairman and members of the National Organizing Committee. And if I'm not, somebody said when you have the mic, you have power. So I want to request that members of the National Organizing Committee please rise for recognition. And please give these ladies and gentlemen a wonderful round of applause. Thank you very much for all the hard work. Thank you very, very much. This is what we've done. Thank you very much. I also want to thank my colleagues in the Secretariat for the wonderful work they've done, for the sleepless night. We thank God. But like I always say, the reward of hard work is more work. So be prepared for more. You have to surpass this next year. And like I told the chairman of our Abuja branch, who is also here, thank you very much, madam. We are coming next to you. It must be bigger than this. Thank you very much, madam. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I thank every one of you, the participants. I thank in advance our first panelist, starting from the keynote speaker of that panel session, His Excellency, Mr. Obaturi Raji Fashola. San, thank you very much. I thank the moderator. They are all here. So ladies and gentlemen, please, let's just do a quick one. 10, 15 minutes, let's come back. We are just starting. It's going to be a wonderful engagement. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Have a nice afternoon.